Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. If you can't guess it, we are talking about corset piercings today. So of course, I decided to get a little corset done to go along with the video. Now, corset piercings have been seeing a lot of popularity recently on TikTok and even on Instagram, and with all of that coverage has also been coming a lot of misinformation. So I thought I'd hop on here and make a video going very in-depth to corset piercings to try and spread some accurate, safe information about these very fun play piercings that we get to do. Now you'll notice that I mentioned that these are play piercings, and that's probably the biggest piece of misinformation about corsets and what I want to get out of the way right off the bat. Corset piercings are play piercings, which means these are temporary piercings worn only for very short periods of time, usually just a few hours, and removed directly afterwards. They are not and have never been piercings that were intended to be permanent or even attempted to heal. And that is because corset piercings simply would not permanently heal on your body, especially not in any of the placements people would commonly get them done. Now, I've already made a bunch of videos talking about play piercings here on YouTube, which I'll link over here, and I've even done some blog posts about them, which I will also link and make sure is in the comments down below. So if you want to learn more about play piercings in general, go ahead and check those out. But for today, we're going to be focusing specifically on the corset, which is a subset of play piercings typically done with captive bead rings or some form of ring and laced up with some form of ribbon or even chain or decorative element to create the effect of a corset. Now, corset piercings were very popular in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I would say probably had their heyday when everything emo was really big on Tumblr, and then has kind of dwindled in popularity since. But we're seeing a resurgence in popularity and interest in them, and I, for one, am super into it as someone who grew up during that era and grew up seeing all of the corset piercings in piercers' portfolios and at tattoo conventions, and just thinking that these were really, really fun and cool. Now, like many folks, the first time I saw corset piercings, I also thought that they were permanent. I was like 16 scrolling on Tumblr, and I saw probably a black and white photo of a girl with a corset piercing down her back, and I was like, oh my God, I need that. I have to have that. And then upon doing any shred of research, I realized it was temporary and was bummed that it wasn't something that I could have for forever, but still thought they were really cool and really fun. And ultimately, very shortly after turning 18, did some corset piercings with my piercer at the time and loved every minute of it. Now, just because a piercing is temporary doesn't mean you can't still enjoy it and have fun. Most folks get corset piercings for an event, an occasion, or a competition, or even a photo shoot, and they are pretty amazing accessory. You can do gorgeous stuff with corset piercings for photo shoots and really elevate them to a level of artwork. I think no one does this better than Mel Sprinkle, who is a piercer actually based here out of Washington, I'm pretty sure. And if you haven't already been following her, go check out her work because she is definitely pushing the boundaries of what is possible with play piercings, and her stuff is unbelievably gorgeous. Corsets can also be really popular for specific events and occasions. When I was younger, I desperately wanted to get a corset piercing done for my senior prom, but I was 17, and so my piercer was like, I'm not gonna do a corset piercing on you at 17, which honestly, like, in hindsight, fair. I also would probably not do a corset piercing on someone at 17. I've done them for clients for all sorts of different events and occasions, lots of Halloween parties, lots of fetish parties, or just events where someone really wanted to stand out against the crowd and be one of the most uniquely dressed people there. Corset piercings, a pretty spectacular accessory to wear to a lot of these events and occasions. And then, of course, what really launched the corset piercing to popularity in the early 2000s were piercing contests at tattoo conventions. I remember a time period when every tattoo convention had someone trying to push the boundaries of what you could do with corset piercings, doing beautiful, intricate patterns, layers, all sorts of fun stuff. And those are the corset piercings that I grew up seeing that made me fall in love with corset piercings. Now, when we talk about the temporary nature of corset piercings, a lot of folks are like, well, what if I just tried to heal it? And don't you worry, we already tried to do that with quite disastrous results. Because corset piercings are done on all sorts of random areas of the body, it is just not practical to have a bunch of piercings on your chest or down your back or on your arms all of the time. It's it just doesn't work out. Not to mention, because they're just pierced through the surface of the skin, they are going to invariably reject. And if you were to try to leave a corset piercing in and try and heal it, you would just end up with basically a long-term scarification project and some very serious scars once things finally migrated out and were removed. And it's just not worth it to end up with dozens of scars all down a part of your body for a piercing that's not going to work out in the long term anyway. So as a general rule of thumb, I suggest having corsets removed no later than 24 hours after having them put in. Most folks have them removed sooner, however. Another question that I get asked a lot when I talk about the temporary nature of corsets is, well, what if we did them with dermals? What if we tried them with surface anchors? And bad news there, because the dermals and surface work are long-term temporary piercings. So most folks are lucky to get anywhere from 1 to 5 years out of surface work, but you're not even going to get that long if you try and wear them as a corset. Surface anchors and bars would not be super resilient to the amount of tension that the jewelry for a corset piercing is placed under in order to lace things up and have it lay right. And yes, we tried to do dermal anchor corsets and even surface bar corsets back in the day, and it did not work out, and a lot of folks just got left with a lot of really bad scars. So please learn from the mistakes that we've already made as an industry and learn from the experimentation we've already tried. Corsets are beautiful when done with captive bead rings and done as temporary piercings, and it's okay for some things to be temporary. It's totally fine that these are not going to be permanent piercings, and you can still get them done and have a ton of fun with them and enjoy them while they last for an event or an occasion. Now, when it comes to actually getting a corset piercing done, the first step is finding a piercer who offers these, and that can be a little bit of a challenge, especially as these piercings are not as popular as they used to be. I would reach out to local piercers in your area and ask if they have any experience with corset piercings or if they've done these before. You'll probably find a lot of old head piercers who haven't done a corset piercing in like over a decade and are bewildered that you're even asking about it, but down to go. And you'll also probably find a lot of younger piercers who've maybe never done a corset piercing or have only done 1 or 2, but are interested in doing more with it and excited to experiment. So both are really awesome opportunities if this is something you're really interested in. Now, as far as the logistics of getting a corset piercing done, let's take a look.
Yeah, big breath in and out. Last one, big in and out.
So the piercings are pretty easy. Because these are done as long-term temporary piercings, they're not quite as deep as you might imagine in the skin. They're really just through those top couple of layers in order to ensure that there is enough strength for them to have the ribbon tensioned on, but not much more than that. That being said, depending on the placement you choose for your corset, they can be kind of pinchy. These lower ones on my chest were a little bit unpleasant, but the upper ones were totally fine. I've had corsets done on my back and on my forearms before, and those were a breeze. And I've had leg corsets done, and the calves and back of my ankles, not the best place to get a whole bunch of piercings, I tell you what. So typically we'll mark and map everything out, and that part takes the longest, making sure that everything is going to be even and sit correctly. Then you'll get the piercings put in, and then we'll start lacing things up.
You got a good bow.
I mean, not bad for not having done this in almost 20 years.
What if I post this video and it like goes super viral and it brings it back and you just got a bunch of requests for corset piercings? I definitely do not miss laying out 2 different colors of ribbon and sitting there and hot gluing them to each other to create like an inverse pattern so that way they stayed perfect. And needing to like Once you're laced up and everything's in, then you can enjoy your corset with whatever your goals for it are. Like I mentioned, some people are going to be wearing these for photo shoots. They're going to be getting really nice pictures taken. Others may be wearing them to an event or an occasion, so then they're off to go have fun at that event. Whatever you're doing with it, enjoy it while you have it. Once you're done wearing it, you just have things removed, and that is as straightforward as undoing the ribbon and just taking out the rings. There is usually not too terribly much bleeding, and since the jewelry is taken out so quickly, the piercings close incredibly fast. Here's a peek at what mine looked like right after they were removed and over the course of the next couple of days. So as you can see, it's just some tiny scabs from where the piercings were, and those begin to heal up and fade relatively quickly. Now, scarring is a factor when we're considering getting corset piercings done or doing them. I would say the majority of folks don't tend to have much scarring or very severe scarring. Lots of folks don't have any scarring at all. I've seen people who have had 100-point corsets done and you could never tell. Their skin looks completely unmarked from it. Other people whose bodies are more prone to scarring or potentially more prone to hyperpigmentation may not have the same experience. I typically get little hyperpigmented spots over wherever I have corsets or slightly larger play piercings, and usually that takes about a year or two to fade for me. However, after a year or two, it usually fades completely and you can't see anything was even there anymore. Now, since corsets are going to be laced up with ribbon and put under tension, they're usually going to be done at a 16 gauge, sometimes a 14 gauge. So they are slightly thicker piercings than your typical plate piercing needles, which can be 25 gauge or 23 gauge. And that slight thickness difference can sometimes mean more scarring. So if you are someone who has skin that's prone to scarring or hyperpigmentation, you should consider that when opting to get these done. If that's something you're concerned about, you can talk with your piercer about using a topical scar treatment after everything's removed and healed up to help minimize the appearance of any scars. But a lot of folks actually really love the concept of having scars after their corset piercings. I knew a client in Florida who had had a massive corset done on her back as part of a tattoo competition many years ago, and she ended up scarring from all of them and had this beautiful hourglass shape of scars down her back that I thought looked incredible, and she really loved too. So for some folks, the potential of scarring afterwards is actually a bit of a perk. The aftercare for these is very simple. It's really just keep it clean and keep it dry. You don't need to use saline or anything like that with traditional piercings. I usually just clean things with soap in the shower and make sure I'm going to sleep on clean sheets and wearing a clean t-shirt or clean sweatpants to bed, depending on what part of my body the corset is on. And typically within 2 or 3 days, things have scabbed up and healed up enough that it's not really a concern. I also don't find that I'm too sore or tender after having a corset piercing done, and my skin is mostly back to normal, again, within just a couple of days. So the aftercare is certainly much easier than any cartilage piercing you've tried to heal in your life. Now, another primary factor when considering getting corset piercings done is the cost, and it tends to cost more than most people would expect. It is a lot of time for us to map things out. Even just a very simple corset like the one that I'm wearing for this video took us about 40 minutes start to finish with sterilization, cleaning, marking and placing things out, doing the actual piercings, and then get everything laced up and tensioned in correctly. And when you start talking about doing very involved corset piercings like full backs and big patterns, you could be looking at 3 to 4 hours of just getting pierced and getting everything laced up. And there's a lot of supplies necessary for this. Lots of needles, lots of captive bead rings, lots of glove changes, of course, all of the ribbon. Depending on how complex the project is, I mean, I've helped on corset piercings where I spent like 7 hours the night before prepping the ribbon and like gluing different colors of ribbon together to create the right pattern to make the corset look the way we wanted to. It can be really involved. So I would say, depending on complexity, you can expect to spend anywhere from $200 to $600 to get a corset piercing done. You also need to consider what you're having this done for. If you're just doing it for a photo shoot, it tends to be a little bit easier because we put everything in, take our pictures, and then take it right out afterwards. But if you're planning on wearing these to an event or a party, depending on the event or occasion, you are going to need a bio person with you all of the time, making sure that you're not bleeding, that there's no risk of cross-contamination, and that you are not risking getting blood on other people attending this event, which could potentially be incredibly unsafe and spread bloodborne pathogens. pathogens. So not only is your piercer going to be doing these piercings for you, but if you're wearing them in an event, they're going to be following you around with a little gear bag that's got some gauze, some saline, Q-tips, wipes, everything we need to maintain these piercings and keep you safe and other people at this event safe for the entirety of the time that you're there. And sometimes that can be a long time. I have spent 4 or 5 hours with someone at a party, just making sure they were having a great time and their piercings were staying safe, clean, and healthy, and we weren't putting them or anyone else attending at risk. You'd also be surprised if your plan is to wear corset piercings to an event, how many people are gonna go, oh my God, are those real or is that makeup? And they're gonna reach out and go to touch you. So your little keeper at the event is also there to be like, what? Don't touch, those are real piercings. Please get your dirty hands away from this person. And monitoring someone at an event like that costs a lot of time, and so you're also paying for your piercer or whoever is coming with you to this event to monitor you for their time in doing that as well. Now that being said, I've spoken to so many younger piercers who've never done corset piercings before or have only done 1 or 2 and want to get into doing more, who are willing to do these at an incredibly discounted rate just to get the experience of it. So if this is something you're interested in, but you can't quite afford the cost of someone who's going to do this at a very high level, consider reaching out to some younger piercers or newer piercers. If you're comfortable being a guinea pig and a first or second corset for them, you will probably be able to get this done at an incredible deal. And honestly, for me, one of the coolest things about corset piercings is that they are temporary. And I just think there's this amazing creative freedom we get when we don't have to be worried about the logistics of something healing. We don't have to be worried about the logistics of it lasting forever or full-time jewelry options or anything like that. When we as piercers get to do corset piercings, we get to truly explore creativity and what is possible with the human skin and flesh as a canvas. And I just think that is so cool and such an incredible art form, and just this subset of piercing that is so unique, and I really enjoy the ephemeral nature of them. I like that there's something that's going to look beautiful and fun for just a couple of hours or just an event or just a day, and then they're beautiful pictures that I can look back on later, but it's also an experience in my body that I get to enjoy. I mean, just as I'm standing here wearing this, I can feel the shifting tension in the ribbon as I move my shoulders and move my arms, and I don't even know a good way to describe that sensation in words, but I'm just very present and very connected with my body right now, and it's super cool. So yes, if you take one big thing away from this video, I hope it's that you understand that corset piercings are temporary. They're not permanent piercings, but they are still incredibly fun for the time period that you wear them. And I hope this video maybe helps change your perspective on the concept of temporary piercings and play piercings, and what a unique and cool exploration of body piercing in the human body they can be. And of course, if you're in the Seattle area and interested in potentially doing some stuff with corset piercings, let me know, because I would love to do more work with these. And I'm just really excited to see that these are kind of starting to make a comeback. All right, folks, thanks so much for hanging out, and I can't wait to sit down and chat with you again soon. Bye.